Today's episode is brought to you by Sports Business Classroom. Landing a job in the NBA is no easy feat. One surefire way to put yourself ahead of a competitive talent pool is if you master the collective bargaining agreement. And now you can, with a course developed by the godfather of the CBA himself, Larry Kuhn. Larry Kuhn has been teaching the CBA to teams, agents, media, and students for over 20 years, and now you can master the CBA through his online video-on-demand course, which is now available to the public. If you're looking to break into basketball or even just set yourself apart, this is the competitive advantage you are looking for. To learn more about the video-on-demand course that has been taken by teams and agents all over the world, please visit sportsbusinessclassroom.com today. Cheyne, man, what's going on?
Hey, man, I'm excited to be here. I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing great. This is going to be a really fun episode. We met a few weeks ago over at GM Academy, a great 3-day course, just learning so much from all these great people. But you were one of the stories from that class that really stood out to everyone involved, right? I mean, everyone was so inspired by what you have done and what you plan on doing. I definitely wanted to make sure to bring you on the No Trade Clause podcast here to kind of go a little bit more in depth on your story and make sure to give you that platform to say it because it's so important and so impactful. And I know so many people can relate to it, whether it's former players or people trying to get into the industry through that route. So I'm really excited about this. And just to start off, in terms of you kind of sharing the early part of your story, kind of before all the accolades, all the tops in the league or the G League, like what really made you fall in love with the game and realize, you know what, like I'm pretty good at this?
For sure. I'm going to take a little bit of time with this because it's a lot of things that go through my mind. And I want to say first and foremost, thank you for the platform because I've actually been wanting to get part of my story out. Some guys may know of it, but not in depth. So I appreciate this. Well, one, growing up in New York, that's kind of all we do. You know, basketball is our culture. You know what I mean? You growing up in inner cities, it's kind of, you just grow up around it. For myself, I came up with a father who was well known from Harlem to Brooklyn. He used to play with Pee Wee Kirkland, Joey, the Destroyer, Tiny Archibald. His name was Cheyne Gadson. He averaged about 55 points at Seward Park. Came up around guys like Vaughn Jackson and Polo Ground. So he was coached by the original Rucker. So he was embedded in basketball. And here I coming up in Queens. He could have went to the NBA out of high school. He chose a religious route, so he really didn't stick with it at all. But he did and gave me the basketball. And, you know, I started to go out there and started to hoop and just fell in love with it. I mean, it became almost habitual where every day after school, every day I get home, I'm in the park, you know, whereas there was many other things that was going on. I was going home, picking up the ball, going to the park. He would come with me, start the fundamentals with myself, and then I just kind of carried on. And like I said, growing up in New York, that's kind of what we see and all we see, as you know, being a fellow New Yorker. And so I would just go outside, even if I didn't even have a hoop. I was known in school to dribble a tennis ball during in the hallways. So basketball just became something I loved. I fell in love with it from there.
That's an incredible story. But talking about number one, how you kind of got hooked on it, but also like kind of the route your father took, right? Being really good at it, but understanding that maybe his passion lied a little elsewhere. So where did you realize then, right? I mean, you're dribbling every day, you're playing every day because, you know, that's what us kids in the city do. But when did it become something where, okay, like I'm making this a career and and maybe even beyond a playing career, I'm making this into my whole life?
Absolutely. Interesting enough, knowing that I was pretty good as I was, you know, I played around older guys. Like I was getting tossed up around older guys, my father's friends, you know, older guys in the park, and I was holding my own. Growing up in a humble household, you know, not much, you kind of take it in stride. I would hear I'm talented, Shane, you know, you out here killing guys that's way older than you, way more experienced than you, this, that, and the third. And so it didn't really click, you know, at the same breath, like I told you, my father, you know, religion was in my house, you know, God was in the house. So it was more so, that was the focus. It really wasn't, you know, allow your talents to create avenues for your success. So personal things happen in life where, you know, mom and dad may not see eye to eye, and, you know, you start to grow up as a child and you start to take on different things and personalities start to change. You start to go through a phasehood of manhood and growing from a boy to more so a man, and you start to make decisions on your own. And there was a time I remember where it wasn't encouraged in my household to play sports. As I told you, that wasn't really our thing. I said, you know what, I gotta find a way. So I went after school. I tried out after school. My coach was like, man, you're a damn good basketball player. So I didn't really want to go home and tell my peoples that because they really wasn't for it. So I would just make up stories like I'm staying up school, study hall, staying up school for this, that, and the third. Come to find out, once I made the team, I'm having to tell them different stories. Like, hey, I'm over at a friend's house. I'm trying to play a game, actually. So then after a while, my father started to hear about me in the streets. Cheyne Gadson this, Cheyne Gadson this. And like I told you, my household was a bit separated at the time. Basketball at that point in time still wasn't like a focal point of, all right, I'm going to really pursue this or I'm going to do some AAU. None of that. That wasn't in my head. It was just, I want to play. It was an outlet. It was really a mental outlet for me. It was something that gave me joy. And so I participated on the team. Strangely enough, I never played AAU ball in New York. It was big on Riverside and Gauchos at the time. I'm attending Jamaica High School at this point in time. My parents, we had to move once again, probably a few times in our lifetime, at a critical point where I had to move in the middle of a season. So we moved Queens Village, so I'm attending Jamaica High School. So I attend Jamaica High School, played 1 year under DeWitt Thompson. At that time, Javar Cheatham was a high-ranking point guard looking at going to Iona. I had no position at the time, just a talented player. Here I am coming into a school, 11th grade. Who is this guy? And so the following year was kind of like, there was a few guys enrolled to kind of be those guys, but it kind of played out to where I became the focal point. Kind of had skills of a 1 through a 4. It really wasn't a certain skill set I had, just talented overall. And so I was 6'3", had a man-child body. So my coach decided to say, hey, we're gonna play you at the point. Did really well my senior year, myself with a lot of other guys on Jamaica High School team. And we went very, very far. And from after that, I wasn't doing so well at, the education piece at the point in time. So then, prep schools was a big deal at the time. Very, very big. I know they are now, but they were really, really big then. And so I went to a prep school in New Jersey, Faith Christian Academy. And then from there, it was really when the spark went off, like, hey, this could be a career path. This could be something that helps you out personally, get more of an education, as well as try to, seek basketball as an avenue through life and see what comes out of it. So I went to school in New Jersey, got my grades really good, played really well. And at that time, I had some advice to still take up, going into junior college to get more experience as a basketball player. So I went to a showcase in New Jersey, destroyed the showcase, literally destroyed the showcase. I mean, at the time, every junior college was calling, but the ones I was focused on was San Jacinto, where Steve Francis went, San Jack in Texas, as well as Kilgore. Scott Schumacher was the coach. I wound up going to Kilgore, Texas. I went there because it was just like, I got to get as far as I can out of New York. Everything was just going on. I was like, all right, this is my pathway. So I buckled down. I focused in on Faith Christian Academy, really did well, did my schoolwork, got good grades, got a good transcript, went to the showcase, really did well there. Here I go going into the following season. Through that summer, me and Scott Schumacher's in discussion and conversation, attending his school. Without a doubt, I went to Kilgore Junior College. Kilgore Junior College, we had guys like Trevor Diggs, Bernard Barrows, Nolan went to Oklahoma. I mean, we had tons of guys who were talented. I began there as my freshman year. I only had 2 years as a junior college. You only get 2 years. So I go there, and being from New York, I'm fresh out of New York. I'm raw out of New York. And again, mind you, I don't have really a basketball background, so to speak, as like understanding the dynamics, right? Because I didn't play AAU, right? I went from a public high school and went and got nominated all Queens, all city, all of that good stuff. And going straight into now the dynamics of school, basketball, time management, all of this good stuff. So really wasn't guiding on that, so to speak, so much. So I did, and the first year was a struggle in the beginning, just trying to acclimate myself to classes and this, that, and the third. Nonetheless, dominated on the court, coming back freshman of the year, come home on Christmas break, get into a terrifying car accident. Laid out on a stretcher. The doctor's prognosis of myself, couldn't play no more for the following year. I reach out to the coach that week. It was like during Christmas week, I reach out to Coach Schumacher and was, hey man, unfortunately I got some bad news. The doctor said I can't play no more. I'm on a stretcher right now, on my back, this, that, and the third. So he's like, going crazy. I'm going crazy in the sense of emotionally, you're just not understanding what the heck just happened. You're coming back freshman, you're supposed to be coming back as the season's ending. They're telling me I was a freshman of the year, couldn't achieve that award due to not being able to finish it out. Just kind of conclude the junior college story. While I was there, I went back to school, but I just couldn't get refocused. It was just too much going on with the injury, everything around campus. I couldn't play. I was just like, I think it may be best for me to go home and try to figure this out. I go home, and fortunately enough, Winston Nicholas, Coach Nicholas, God bless his soul, who's no longer with us, he was instrumental in getting me back to where I needed to be. Because remember, I took a whole semester off. And Winston Nicholas was recruiting me during the times of the scouting showcase, the junior college showcase. So he's always stayed in the loop with myself and my progress, etc. So I come home, I get things together during the summer. I'm in summer school, I'm taking classes online. And now Westchester Community College in Valhalla, New York, it's not known for basketball. I mean, you know, if we all just being transparent, it's just not really a known basketball school. At the time, you know, more personal stuff was happening again with the family, and you know, just to be raw about it, you know, we was living really, really, really bad. I mean, I think I mentioned in one of my other interviews, the house was rat infested. Really, just wasn't good for living environments. My little sister at the time, it was just myself, my mother, and my little sister, and the house was just really bad. And fortunately, I put myself in a position to buy a vehicle. So I had a nice little Honda Accord at the time. So realizing the commute was getting ridiculous from Westchester to from Brooklyn, New York to Westchester Community College at the time. It was just an hour, 30 minutes at the time. I'm picking up other guys, other teammates, bringing them up to school. I was like, this is gonna be an overload. I don't know how I'm gonna do this. But the whole time, from the beginning of the time when I went to Faith Christian, I said, no, this is my avenue. So I was like, nothing's gonna reroute me no matter what. Even though I had the back situation happen now, I'm transferring back to New York. I'm still focused on, I gotta succeed in what I wanna do. I'm going back and forth from Brooklyn to Valhalla, New York, and it's just getting too much. So I come to my coach one day, I was like, Coach Nicholas, there's a lot going on in my personal life. Can I possibly stay down in the locker room? And the locker room was downstairs. For those that know Westchester Community College, the locker room was right downstairs of the gym. So he says, yeah, no problem, man, no problem. So he allowed me to stay in the locker room. So when days for school, get dressed, I'm showering in the locker room, I'm getting dressed, I'm going up to my classes, this, that, and the third, coming right back over to practice, going back down in the locker room to sleep. And this was my everyday till the school ended. So at that time, I looked at it two ways. I was like, okay, this is a very, very adverse current circumstance you're in. But at the same breath, you got a gym upstairs, you have a vehicle to get food. You could get so much better here. Why not? He's giving you the gym, you sleep downstairs. I took full advantage of it. I always seen like a glass half full in situations like that. So I took full advantage of that. Just kind of conclude with that, where the junior college story is. My grades is doing well. I had colleges coming in, Texas A&M, Oklahoma State, East Carolina. I'm dominating the league. As a team, we're dominating the league. We won the championship. I received all the accolades and all the awards for that season that could be possibly dished out. But again, at that time, Coach Nicholas was a guiding force in understanding how colleges work, how school works, how this works. But I hit another road of not doing well in school just because of different things going on again at the house. A lot of different dynamics I wasn't truly focused again. Brad Seisler and Billy Seisler were representatives of mine. They were representing Smush Parker at the time, Ben Gordon at the time. Not really being privy to understanding the business of basketball, I didn't know what they were around for. I looked at them as like, oh, these are just my trainers. They were bringing us up to the Reebok Club. I mean, we were doing it big. I'm hanging out with Ben Gordon. Ben Gordon's National Player of the Year at this time. So I'm like, all right, these are cool guys, but I'm Cheyne Gadson from Jamaica, Queens, New York. I don't have that household name yet. I'm still trying to build that. Brad comes to me one day. He's like, hey man, I think I'm gonna get you a workout. I was like, what do you mean? I'm just gonna try to get you an NBA workout just in case things don't go to your satisfaction as far as school goes. Not understanding what none of that meant. right? Let me get your NBA workout. Yeah, okay. So Rick Carlisle, who was a Detroit Pistons coach at that going into that season, they were really good friends. Rick Carlisle came in junior college, West Community College, and worked me out about an hour and a half. I mean, killed me. I didn't understand what kind of workout I was going through. We didn't have no workouts like that at junior college level. Killed me. At the end of it, Brad was reported back and told, I have all the capabilities of NBA talent, right? All the skill set, all of the et ceteras. Okay, cool. Kind of got remotivated. Remotivated, of course. It would do that. I'm thinking for anybody. Pick myself back up like, oh, this, you kind of been validated. You could play in the league, but you still, you have way more to go, a lot more growth to be had. Got it back together. Signed Oklahoma State. Took the visit. One visit. Meanwhile, I had all these types of schools coming at me. At the end, North Carolina came in. Took one visit and signed there. Went there the following year. And that's kind of where the college story began. But I'll allow you to jump back in and ask any other questions you may have, because I was rumbling for a little bit.
Wow. I mean, that was you when we were texting, you told me that you had an inspirational story to tell. And I believed you. I knew it was coming, but this is next level. Like what you just shared. We spoke a little bit before we got on, and I told you how I love doing these kinds of interviews, because I learned so much that just isn't on. You can't Google that. Like you can't Google your story doesn't come up in the search engine. The layers that go beyond, okay, like you playing at this level or playing at like there's so much more to your story than just that. And we spoke about your talent at the beginning, and all that's great. But I think what's really mind blowing about all this whole thing is how your faith guided you through all of this. So, and it's something, right, whether it's the name of one of the schools you went to, or obviously, God was always in your house growing up. Like, how important was that? You mentioned how you're a glass half full kind of guy, but to get through that adversity, to always know that there's light at the end of the tunnel.
I was asked that actually playing with a teammate, and I was towards the end of my career, was in Tunisia, and I'm going to your question, but that was asked to me, like, Cheyne, how do you always know you're going to be okay? A lot of it just bears on self-confidence and motivating factors around you of understanding this is not how you want to live, right? One of my things that I've kind of stuck in my head was I never want to go back to how I lived. So if anything outside of that, whatever circumstance I got to create in order for me not to continue to live how I live, I was willing to do that. Just ultimately having a ton of self-confidence in myself, my basketball abilities. I was a pretty bright guy, just didn't really want to apply myself just due to all the different distractions I had going on in my personal life, and just felt like, at a certain point I had to put the big boy pants on and grow up and get it together. I just felt the need to really invest in myself and believe. Just really believe it. Once you believe, a lot of things can happen. So I just wanted to add the piece in which I totally missed, because we went straight to high school more so. But between the 9th and 11th grade, I really made a name. And New York City is big for making a name on the street. I'm sure we've heard of Corey Williams, homicide. I'm sure we all heard of guys like Smush Parker, throwing out a few names. I made a huge name in Jamaica, Queens on the street parks. You know what I mean? It was kind of like, who is this guy coming up? They was calling me Low Down Dirty at the time, Seventh Heaven, Young and Dangerous. I mean, I was playing with Lamar Odom and Lincoln Park in the all tournament teams. So it was all-star team. I mean, the way I would say it was kind of like I know Sebastian has the Through the Fire, and all love and all due respect to that. But when you talk about Through the Fire with actually no household names or nobody behind you being able to pull you up and say, hey, this is the guy to look for, and you kind of create that in yourself, I like to consider myself also putting myself through the fire. So I wanted to submit that in the conversation, as far as it began for me on the concrete of New York as well, before the high school blossomed. But jumping to now where we at with Oklahoma State, leaving junior college as an All-American, did everything I could possibly do at junior college. Went on to Oklahoma State with all the hype you could actually have. Now, if you remember, I told you I was living with my mother and my sister. So that was another motivation for myself. At the time, I said, all right, if I could work this out, my mother comes down and live in her own house, but in the same, city, I would feel more comfortable with that, her and my little sister, because of the way my dynamics was. Able to get that to happen. So that occurred in really, really set things off. So I'm going into school, Oklahoma State. I'm now entering my junior year. Played in a Ohio camp with Shaq, Wally Zerbiak. Wally Zerbiak was very close to Brad Slicer at the time. So I'm playing pickup. I'm doing my thing. I hit Wally Zerbiak with it in and out. He shifts but recovers because he was a really good defender. Let's give him that. He was a really good defender, but he recovers and tweaks my knee. So I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know I have a really bad knee injury. So I go up to the trainers. They're like, you need to ice it. I ice it. I try to walk on it the next day. I say, no, this is different. So Brad takes me to a doctor, Brad Slicer, and the MRI discovers I had a tear in my knee, right? Needed a scope. Meanwhile, I'm supposed to be going into school at this time. This is during the summer, Oklahoma State. So you don't want to tell the schools at this point in time, you're dealing with an injury because, you're pretty much a bad batch at this point. So I didn't tell them that, but I went to school, try to get through it. And it just so happened when I got there, injury kind of reoccurred again. And it was like, they did some more digging into it. They was like, you got to have a scope. So Murphy Grant, the head trainer, who's now a friend of mine to this day, who's now with the Utah Jazz, just recently got on Utah Jazz, shout him out. He discovered I needed to have a scope. So Eddie Sutton, one of the most legendary coaches, could be a mean man, but was a really, really good coach, was like, you're going to be out for about 6 months. And that kind of gave me ample fire to say, no, I'm not, I'm going to get back at 3. But I was pushing myself to where it was not going to allow myself to be productive on the court. So I did that. Nonetheless, it put me back behind the 8 ball. So I didn't really do as much as I was supposed to do my junior year. Then in my junior year, they were recruiting one of the best known defenders in NBA history, Tony Allen, a good friend of mine to this day. Tony Allen, I helped recruit, bringing him to Oklahoma State. He signed. And so I'm healed up my following year, but now they have this guy coming in with, again, high regard. He's supposed to do his things, All-American coming from junior college, hard-nosed player, could score. So now I'm up against the fact I'm dealing with a knee injury. I'm going in my senior year. The pressure's on. I got to make noise. Tony Allen's here. And it's like, all right, the battle's on. But the battle didn't fall and the battle fell in his hands. It worked out way better for him because, he was a junior coming in. He got those starting minutes. And I was dealing with the fact of trying to make myself get better, feel better, be productive, help the team, get along with coach. And none of those things was going well. Being a guy like myself who was an instinct kind of player as a point guard, Coach Sutton, I didn't really feel like I fit within the kind of basketball that was played at that time because of the lack of thereof. Just taking my time with the school signing, right? I just signed straight to Oklahoma State. So again, my fault. However, that's how my college career ended, although I graduated with a degree in education, which is very, very important. But as far as the basketball collegiate side of it, I didn't do really well. I mean, I dominated against a few ranked teams in the league. I was leaving Oklahoma State as a senior with the accolade of a Big 12, all Big 12 reserve team. Didn't complete the expectations I had for myself at all. So kind of underachieved on the basketball side of things at Oklahoma State due to injury, due to lack thereof, whatever the case may be. So I leave Oklahoma State, and I'm sure like a lot of guys, they feel like the world is over. So I have a ending call with Eddie Sutton, and Eddie Sutton says, son, I think, things didn't go as planned as you would have liked them. And, as far as the NBA goes, I don't really see it. I see you more of an overseas guy. Come on, man. Stuff like that just flames my fire. I get motivated over stuff like that. Like, I'm a grinder. That's what I do. That's how I'm able to keep prevailing through situations. So when he told me that, I was like, okay, you'll see, type of attitude. Come back to New York, living in Queens at the time, working out at Nyack all the time. I mean, every professional player, every no-name player you could think of was coming to Nyack at the time. Andre Barrett, Smush Parker, Ben Gordon, Mark Strickland. I mean, the list goes on. So we competing, and this was a Milton Lee's run, who was affiliated with New Jersey Nets at the time. And so we all competing at the time. I coincidentally come across an agent named Steve Cronin. He had worked with Baseline Sports. Any guy leaving college, most of the time, you're not really having a lot of banking in their account. You know, you're not really living off a ton of finances, so you're kind of trying to figure it out while still trying to fulfill your dreams. You still have this basketball dream. You still have this passion to play. You still have a boatload of talent left in you that you can't seem to just let go. This is what you do. So I made it a point after agreeing with Steve Cronin in his terms, I'm gonna live in the gym. So I was living in the Nyack gym on the east side and on the west side. I mean, every morning, traveling from New York City train station, getting up there, working out, this, that, and the third, getting myself prepared for anything that may be possible, right? You stay ready, you don't have to get ready. So that occurred. So Steve Cronin and I decided to take a road of, hey man, why don't we try to get you some trials in the NBDL at the time? In the NBDL, there was a few trials coming up, and so we decided to prepare. So I prepared in Long Island, Suffolk County. I was staying at maybe a motel, and the trainer who we hired is a very well-known trainer in the NBA, Jerry Powell, right? We had hired Jerry Powell, who was on the come up at the time. He really wasn't established as he is to this day. So I was getting in 2 workouts a day. 2 workouts a day, I mean, the best workouts of my life. And I give Jerry Powell his props to him and publicly. So shout Jerry Powell out for, you know, putting that due diligence in with myself, allowing me to get in shape the way I was getting in shape, the way I got in shape. At the same breath, while I'm getting in shape, Steve Cronin is doing his part. He's reaching out to teams. He reaches out to Huntsville Flight in Alabama, Huntsville, Alabama. Probably one of the first teams. They had guys like Ronald Dupree, Mateen Cleaves, Eric Barkley. But nonetheless, who's Cheyne Gadson? No stats. No stats from Faith Christian. Yeah, stats enough to get me by, but not to the point of this guy is a powerhouse name. We need to make sure he's on his team. None of that. But what I did do, I got in the greatest shape. I mean, they got articles I still have where I came in looking like a chiseled boxer. I mean, the best shape of my life. And at the same breath, I had NBA talent, right? I just didn't understand the NBA game at the point. Tryouts occurred. Mateen Cleaves, Michigan State, my boy to this day, shout to him. Eric Barkley, everybody knows Eric Barkley. If you come up in New York, All-American, Christ the King, played in the league. These guys are still prominent names. These guys are still radar guys for the NBA. I'm a nobody. We going up against each other in practice. I'm holding my own. I'm doing my job. They only want to keep 2 positions for 10-player roster, right? At each position. I'm a point guard /2. So at the end of camp, Ralph Lewis says, you did a wonderful job. Did a wonderful job. Unfortunately, I only want to keep 2. It's going to be hard for me. Go home in my hotel, bite my nails, motions are running. Kind of like, oh man, I already know what this is coming to, but I feel good about myself, how I approached it. Get a phone call, hey man, we're gonna invite you. We're gonna bring you in. That's how it all started for me. You know, thank you to Ralph Lewis, thank you for the work I put in, thank you to Jerry Powell. But that's where my role of the NBDL, NBA overseas continuous grind happened till just about 2018 when I got back from China. And the coronavirus hit. Up until then, I was still possibly pursuing other leagues to play in. In between that, there's a lot of things that occurred. I'm sure we can get into that if there's any certain different questions you may have. But I just ended recently with the Big 3. And the reason why I did that, first year, which was the trial was about 2017 or 18, don't quote me on that. I went to the draft combine, had no shame in my game, no ego. I was willing to try out. At this point in time, I had a name. Guys knew what I could do. Guys knew my capabilities. Didn't have a powerhouse name, but I had a name enough to where it was like, all right, we got to respect this game on this level. But I still felt I had more in my tank, as well as the same breath, I wanted to concrete my name amongst these household names, if that makes sense. Because when you're going up against them, you're playing against them, you feel like, yo, I belong. You know what I mean? And I've never been a guy that chased the money. I've always followed my passion, my dream. And so I was like, I'm going to just continue to do that. I did that, man. I went to the last trial we recently had, and I was the last pick of the draft. For me, that was like, for me, honestly, man, that was like everything I've worked for. Although it wasn't the NBA draft, it wasn't NBA money. For me, that was almost like a stamp on my hard work, right? That hard work does pay off on whatever you may see as success, right? Success is subjective. So for me, concrete my name against amongst guys that's done did it, being coached by George Gervin, being around him, learning different things, a friend to this day, couldn't beat it, couldn't trade it for the world. So that's kind of how I recently just ended playing and now comfortably transitioning to what we earlier discussed. But in between the first stop at the NBDL to the last job before China, I mean, so many things occurred as far as from Armani jeans to Argentina, in which I don't mind getting into. So some of my stops was Armani jeans. I was told I was making 250,000 as a rookie. They had told me they haven't done that in 9 years. I was pretty proud of myself about that. Brian Elphis, who's a very big household name in the NBA to this day, he was my representative at the time. But before Armani jeans, the interesting thing was that Miami Heat and Pat Riley were having discussions about me because I was at minicamp, and they had voted me MVP of the minicamp. But I'm in my hotel. I remember on the beach, and Brian Elvis calls me. He's like, "Listen, man, we got 250,000 on the table at Armani Jeans EuroLeague team, or do you wait to see if you're gonna go to vet camp, bro?" Yeah, 250,000. I'm like, that'll be there, cause right, my mind is, I want to get to the league. I want to get to where I feel I can play. Yeah, but he's thinking, right, the guidance piece is where it was important, and where I would suggest to young players to this day, you get a good guidance piece behind you, you'll do really well, you'll succeed anyway. So I was hearing him, but wasn't hearing him, right? I was going against his will, was hearing him, wasn't hearing him. But he said, man, go ahead, play one more day in the mini camp, but you got to make a decision by tomorrow. So tomorrow came, and I was like, all right, we'll just take that offer. But I don't know what could have came about anything else on the other side of it at that time. So I take the job at Armani Jeans, do very, very well. Mine is still on the D League. About February, I'm like, Brian, get me back in the G League. Let's see what in the NBDL. Let's see what can happen at the time. So I come back in the NBDL, play for one of those teams. I play for many teams in the NBDL. But that cycle of, coming back to the D League, just to keep my name within the mix, kind of be on the radar, because once you're gone, you're kind of gone. Guys tend to forget about you unless you're just really, really dominating things. And then I would go back overseas. So I had many jobs in like Argentina, Italy, Venezuela, Mexico, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, Latvia. The list goes on. But in between that, I was always coming back to the States to try to succeed at getting the call up and things like that. One of my most last memorable times in the NBDL, Randy Livingston was our coach, Idaho Stampede. I'm a seasoned NBDL vet at this point. From going from a top leading scorer with Tulsa 66ers with Joey Myers and Roy Rogers, to learning how to dominate from the two guard to the one position. I mean, I've embodied that at this point while I'm in Idaho. I'm doing very well, almost averaging a triple double, maybe 15, 8, and 8. Things transpired. We had a really, really young but veteran team, so it was like a combination of both. So things transpired in practice where, it didn't really, really go too well with guys, but guys got into it with each other, and the coach didn't like that, right? And so here it is. I'm doing really well. I'm being told Chicago and Denver's looking at me. I'm looking to get a call up. We go out to West Coast and play against the Santa Cruz, who's the name of the team today. Did really good. Come back the following day, I'm being released. Never really was told as to why, but just tried to put two and two in my head to make it make sense. Never really did. What I'm saying in that is that although that occurred, and I was really at the really last brink of getting called up, I didn't let it deter me. I went back overseas and continued on with the basketball process, with the China, and here we are today, man. That's kind of where it kind of concludes.
There's so much in there, and I can't wait to see all these little highlights get posted on social media because there's going to be a lot. I know there's like some limits on some of those platforms, like Instagram only allows like 10 posts. We're gonna have to test those limits and see what we could do there because you just dropped so many little stories throughout that really paint the picture of both your career, but also kind of how much. I mean, to think about it, it's kind of crazy. You kind of started your NBDL career at the start of it all, almost maybe a season or two afterwards, and went through all the way to now it being the G League and stuff. I mean, before and the transition you're making now into post your playing career is what I really want to get into. But before we do that, I really want to just know like what were some of the biggest differences. I mean, like your game obviously evolved big time, but the league itself is night and day different from what it used to be. And that's the league that you're about to try to get into and try to do all this other stuff post playing. What did you kind of see throughout the last almost 17 to 20 years?
Man, I've seen, even from a coaching standpoint, um, I don't want to call these guys more sensitive, but the way you got to coach them nowadays is very, very different. I recall where coaches could really, get on you. They could really get in your face. They could really be, passionate about what they're trying to get their point across to without a hashback or guys getting in their feelings and going to do the talking behind coach's back type of thing. And then on top of that, the physical piece of the game, without question. I mean, the way the game is called now took a little bit. It's definitely ran the numbers up, in which we could appreciate from an entertainment standpoint. But for those guys that love hard nosed defense, I think that's kind of gotten away. We gotten away from that a little bit. We got more. We definitely gotten away from the bigs. I mean, we don't even use our bigs as bigs anymore, right? They just, which is good for the game in some sense. It adds an extra threat to a big. But at the same breath, back to saying if you like that old school way of basketball, feeding it down low, working from the outside in, those are noticeable differences for me. But now, being a player, being well-rounded, being experienced, I think it's important to have an approach of a diplomatic approach and a holistic approach and an autocratic approach, where you're kind of combining three different approaches in one, being able to, care about a player, hear a player, and also be able to discipline a player, right? And also be able to listen to a player. So I think the dynamics of coaching on a general scale is always there. Just the way the game has transitioned from, playing down low or being physical to now, it's a lot more analytics involved. Not so much about production as a player, but more so the numbers of where baskets are being made from, or 3-pointers being more of the focal point than twos. But transitioning, when you're transitioning on the good side about it, you also want to see the good in it, right? You also want to see what are the advantages of the new way of playing. So that's part of why, I was on the sports business classroom. Darvin Ham, who's a very close friend of mine, mentor to this day, congratulations, shouts to him on the Milwaukee Bucks championship. He advised me to take the course. And currently what I'm doing right now, to go to the point of saying where the transition is important and educating yourself on the good of where the transition and currently where guys are today in the game, the way it's played. I'm doing an NBA assistant coaching program right now. So I'm also involved in that, which is giving me, more full understanding of the analytics because I don't know it. So from that side of the game, from that side of it, it could be instrumental to my new way of coaching. So I think overall, when like anything, time changes, things change. You got to be able to, succumb to the change, right? You can't always go with your old ways. So how I look at it is if there's advantages that I can have by bringing some experience from my old ways of thinking or playing and bring that into my style of coaching to the modern day, I'll be successful because I think it's all about balance, right?
Definitely, it definitely is all about balance. And coming out, we were talking about the transition you're about to make. The opportunities are endless, and the options you have are kind of incredible. Right, thinking about how much the league has grown, and you can kind of do anything you want almost in basketball, which is kind of crazy, right? Like thinking about
Yeah.
what you can do now. And obviously we spoke about all the adversity you went through. this next chapter of your life is maybe where the fun all starts. And it's really exciting looking at all that. But what are you really looking to get into more? What are you excited for? I mean, summer league just kind of, it's crazy, right? I feel like I just got back from this past summer league, but it's only a few months away now, right around the corner. Like, what are you most excited for? Kind of jumping into this new basketball world now that you're done playing.
For one, I wish I was at that summer league. I missed it, but for this one coming up, I'm excited to be at the Portsmouth draft combine. I'm excited to be at the summer league as well. I really I don't miss it because I'm involved with it somewhat now, is the development piece and, mentoring these guys. So being that my entry passion right now is to be on the development side of things, so development coaching, I'm excited to get back in the locker rooms with guys, kind of identifying weaknesses and strengths, and being able to lay that out on the floor, whether it be through video or through an eye view, and being able to, maximize these guys' potentials and abilities is really where I draw a ton of passion for and from. I like to be able to, help a guy see, because some guys, when they transition in from whether college or pros or whether G League to pro, the understanding of where they're getting their shots from or where they're making these plays from is the most important piece.
It's 2:00.
Because the structure of the NBA game is not a lot of time where coaches have to explain these things to you, right? So a lot of it trickles down to your assistant coaches and the development coaches. So it's all about the work that's being done on the lower levels that allow the upper levels, for these guys to improve. So it can help the head coaches be able to implement what they want faster. So I think us guys that are looking to be development coaches could play a huge part immediately and have a lot of value. That's what I'm solely interested in, as well as passionate about, and also get joy from scouting. And they kind of play neck to neck, if you ask me.
They definitely do. And we're talking about things kind of playing together. I mean, that can be said about scouting, it can be said about player development, it could be said about almost anything. And kind of all these different things that we touched on, whether it's at Sports Business Classroom, specifically at GM Academy a few weeks ago. Like, obviously those are your main things, right? Scouting, player development. What are some other, like, maybe parts of the industry that you're maybe trying to touch or get a taste of to then complement what you're really good at, which is the player development side of things?
Well, like I said, taking the Sports Business Classroom for me was understanding kind of the general manager role and which one day I could see myself playing, understand how to assemble a team, not just from a playing aspect, right? But then I got to understand the numbers, what goes into the numbers. I got to understand the time constraints, what you're able to work with. I got to understand salaries, who's able to be paid this, that, and third, luxury tax, all of this stuff that I really, as a player, wasn't taking the time out to understand. I shared some interest in understanding that a lot more as well, because as my career grows and progresses, I do want to be able to climb the ladder and not stay stagnant. So that's something that's also in the back of my head, as well as doing the development coaching.
I love it how you have all these things in your back pocket, all these different skill sets that you can kind of call back on at any point whenever you might need them. You're going to need, and there's going to be so many opportunities for you to do that over these next few. It's kind of crazy. Like the years down the line, but even just as soon as the next few months, like that, these opportunities will come, and I know you'll be more than ready for it. So it's just super exciting seeing you kind of embark on this new journey after all these incredible stories you just laid out for us, and all your past journeys. I'm seeing it all kind of play out. I can't wait to hear more and to meet up with you at Summer League and to maybe talk more about this stuff. It's going to be a lot of fun. And I know our listeners listen to this are going to go like either crush a workout or like, I don't know, like send a bunch of emails. No one's going to go away from this show and like go to sleep and take a nap. Like if you log off this podcast, you're going to go out and do something great because of what you just shared with us. So thank you so much, Cheyne, for sharing this all with us. This was awesome.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate the platform, man. And I just wanted to say one last thing for those that I wanted to say this, just as a human being and as a player. And when you're transitioning and going into different careers, you can't give up hope or faith, although it may seem like sometimes it's not going that way for you, just because us as players have been doing this for so long, right? And we get accustomed to a way of doing things, and now you got to change your way of of looking or networking or introducing yourself or putting yourself back out there or reinventing yourself. I just want to say to those guys that don't give up, continue on, and things will work out in your favor. Man. Don't lose the faith.